All right, here we go. It is the Greg Maddox episode, the Mike Piazza episode. I'm trying to think of other famous 31s. But anyway, it is Dan Mathews and the Animals. He is the animal, Matt Maltepes. I, of course, not the animal. You can see it right there at the bottom of the screen. I'm Dan Mathews. Matt, we're finally here. It's the national championship game, and it's a national championship game that I don't think a lot of people saw coming at the beginning of the season. I think we probably expected, if you had asked me back in August when we started doing this, that we would probably be talking about Georgia being one of the teams. Not necessarily surprising that Michigan is one of the teams in this. I think a lot of people were high on Michigan coming into this season, and Jim Harbaugh's program was able to follow through on that belief. So Michigan is here. I mean, obviously not without controversy this season. We'll see how that all shakes out. I mean, maybe this is Jim Harbaugh's final game in college too, as well, that he bids farewell to Ann Arbor. I mean, I think if nothing else, if there was a parachute for him to leave the program, this would be it. If they won the national title, then I think that most Michigan fans would say, hey, you delivered what we asked for. We would have loved for you to stayed, but the program's in a good place. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. If he wins this, man, you don't know what's going to happen. And the program, I mean, look what they've done. I mean, undefeated this year, and they're going for an undefeated season. And, we got another team undefeated now, Washington, going up against them. It's funny, it's two undefeated teams. I don't think many people thought Washington was going to be here. They did have high hopes for Michael Penix, but, some people were saying Florida State should have won in the playoffs,
Right.
So everything's really interesting, man. And Harbaugh might leave off on a high note.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said. I mean, I think if he wins the national title, then I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion. He's out of there. If they lose, I could maybe see him saying unfinished business. I like the team I have coming back, all that kind of stuff. But either way, I mean, last week there was the news he hired Don Yee, who of course has extensive experience in the NFL. He was Tom Brady's agent, I guess still is, because Brady still has things he needs representation for, all of those things. So that's why a lot of people believe this might finally be the one where he says, yeah, I'm going back to the NFL. Because I think if nothing else too, before we get into the game, Matt, I think he feels like there's unfinished business there. I mean, he almost got San Francisco there. And there's only a handful of guys that have won a national title and gone to the next level and been able to win a Super Bowl. I mean, Jimmy Johnson comes to mind. Like I said, there's only been a handful of them. And if Harbaugh can do that, I mean, everybody talks about Saban. If Harbaugh does that, then a lot of people are putting him in the same category as a Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, Harbaugh, he went to the Super Bowl with the 49ers versus his brother, the Ravens. That was a pretty crazy Super Bowl, the brothers. And that team was always competitive. Nonetheless, every single year in, year out, they were always competitive. And then now if he goes to college, wins the chip here with Michigan. I mean, you're right. He has unfinished business in the NFL. And to be able to conquer both feats, win a championship in both, I mean, that's a remarkable accomplishment.
No doubt about it. So let's get to the game itself. As for this one on Monday night, I mean, the line has fluctuated at times. I've seen it get as high as Michigan -5. Right now, it's back to the number that I think a lot of people had it from the beginning, Michigan -4.5. The money line, though, if you're feeling Washington, which I know a lot of people are feeling Washington. I mean, I think that's probably a huge reason why you're starting to see this line come back a little bit, because despite their faults on defense in the passing game, I don't necessarily think that's something they have to worry about as much for Michigan, although J.J. McCarthy played a pretty good game against Alabama's really good defense. But I think that the other thing, too, that the reason why people believe in Washington, Michael Penix is not a sit back there and wait and throw guy. He's a get the ball, get it out quick guy. And a lot of people believe that can neutralize this Michigan defense in this game. I think that's going to be huge for them to have a chance in this one. Also, to the over-under is 56. Matt Maltepes, the floor is yours. How are you seeing this?
So Washington in this game 7-6-1 against the spread this year, while Michigan's 8-5-1. However, Michigan does have a higher point margin of victory at 25.8, while Washington, I mean, they have 13.5 margin of victory, which is nearly half. Both of these teams come into the game undefeated on the season. Talked about that earlier. Both teams last week had their games come down to the absolute wire. Texas in the red zone, and with less than 20 seconds, they had a shot, and the Huskies didn't let them in the end zone. And exact same thing with Michigan in the Alabama game. Somehow they pulled it off in OT. Michigan, in my opinion, though, they had the more impressive win because when I looked at it, I mean, to me, they won that game, that box score. However, in the Washington game, I believe Texas gave that game away with their fumbles a little bit. They started the second half with a fumble that put them down 2 scores. When I look at the Michigan game, Wolverines outgained Alabama by 70 yards, and the Huskies only outgained the Longhorns by half of that. But I mean, hats off to Michael Penix. Absolutely phenomenal game. All of that, is done and over with, though. So it's only about what you do next. And someone's going to have to win this week. Someone's going to have to lose. I think Michigan wins this one. I think they pull it out. I know I said this last week about Washington not being ready for a team of Texas caliber, but I don't think Washington's been tested throughout the year with a team with this type of defense. And Michigan, they're top 10 in almost every category. Defense is top 10 in opponent yards per completion. And all Washington does is, they let Penix air that ball out. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, when we compare Michigan and Texas was ranked 45th in opponent yards per completion. There's a big difference. Michigan ranks number 3 in opponent passer rating. Texas ranked 41st. So another thing to note, Michigan ranks number 3 in opponent passer rating. I said that, but also their top 5 team in sack percentage. Penix has not versed a team that good of a defensive line, pass defensive line. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think if there was a game where Michael Penix has any struggles, it would be this game. And on top of that, I'm a fan of Michigan's style. They run the ball, they control the clock, and they play defense. Their defense is top 15 team in interceptions per game as well. And when we look at Washington's run defense, I mean, they're not anything special. They rank 82nd in opponent yards per rush, going up against a Michigan team where all they do is run the ball. It's going to be hard, I think, for Washington to pull this out. As a dog, I like Michigan -4.
There you go. So, I mean, you see how the number plays all week. I mean, if you're really liking Michigan, then, maybe that 4.5 is still in play. But, I mean, I guess if nothing else, you're kind of counting on this to be a pretty close game to the end.
Well, -4 would mean it's at least a touchdown. Well, not necessarily, but I think it's a touchdown game. I think they win by over 4. I think, they can get that win. I think they can win by a touchdown if you want to take that alternate spread as well. 6.5.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. So that 4.5 number for Michigan, really liking that. I mean, I also, I look at that over under as well. You see it at 56. I feel like that's a good number. I feel like that's one that Vegas sets it at. And, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Washington's going to at least score 30, right? But, I mean, you talked about this Michigan defense. I mean, that's something that has been a little bit of an unseen for Washington. But, I mean, I also think, though, too, kind of to wrap this up, Matt, they haven't seen an offense like this. I mean, They didn't see this from Ohio State. They didn't see this from Alabama. They did not see this from Penn State. I mean, the only other game that I can point to that maybe they saw an attack kind of like this, Maryland, and Michigan kind of struggled in that game. But that was weeks ago. They're a different football team now than they were back then.
So I have a question for you, Dan. What do you think coming into this game, when you have a team that passes the ball, they're like top 10, top 15 in pass percentage, right? And a team that runs the ball, that's, pretty much all they do, right? With Michigan, heavy run team. Where are you more liable to make mistakes, running the ball or throwing the ball through the air?
Well, I mean, I would say that it's got to be throwing the ball. I mean, because running the ball, there's really only one thing that can go wrong. You fumble the football. I mean, you could say a loss on a play. All right, fine. You get to come back for the next play. I mean, throwing the football, intercepted, a fumble can happen there because it's somebody else with the football. I think that probably even to take it a step forward and to probably, join you in your belief in Michigan for this one is that it comes down to a battle of the fronts and the offensive front for Michigan, the defensive front for Michigan. I mean, definitely believe they have the better opportunity than, say, Washington does in that regard.
Yeah, with that being said, that's why, I agree with you. Michigan hasn't faced an offense and a quarterback like Michael Penix this year. But when it comes to this specific game, the way it's going to play out, and where does, whoever wins the turnover battle usually wins the game and usually covers the game. So when I'm looking at who's more liable to make a mistake, I think it's Washington against the best defense rather than Michigan against a great offense.
No doubt about it. And I don't know if my nephew Rory agrees. He's right here hanging out with us for a second. But, definitely believe we're going to be seeing a good game on Monday night, and can't wait to see how it all shakes out. And, of course, us being here in the city of Houston, too. I mean, we get to, have such a great event here, but also, too, I mean, let's be honest here. There's a little bit of disappointment that Texas is not in this. I think that probably the ideal game for this would have been Texas and Bama. But if it were Texas and Michigan, I think you still would have had a lot of people who were very interested in this. There he is. There he is right there.
He's like, I wish Texas was in there.
I think so, too. Although I think he's more of wishing that Ohio State was in this, I think, over Michigan. So his dad is a massive Ohio State fan. So that's where we're going to leave it. I got to do bubble time and all of that with the nephew. But anyway, like in Michigan for this one, -4 if you can get it. It's right now at 4.5. So still liking that too. Yes, I know, buddy. I know. There he is. See, bubble time. Gotta jump on bubbles with him. I'm Dan Mathews. He's Matt Maltepes. This is Dan Mathews in the Animals with a special cameo by Rory. Oh, well, Mom and Dad didn't give me permission to put you on camera, buddy. We'll have to work on that maybe next season, all right? That's going to do it for episode 31. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good luck. We'll talk to you next week.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, my